Liberty Nation. Truth is making a comeback.
Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation's LNTV. I'm Mark Angelides. Today we're looking at the legal aspects of the Julian Assange arrest. After 7 years in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, his claim for asylum there has been revoked and he was arrested by British police. To discuss this and find out more about what the likely next steps are, we're joined by Liberty Nation's legal affairs expert, Mr. Scott D. Cosenza. Welcome aboard, Scott.
Hi, Mark.
So to start with, can you give us an overview of Mr. Assange's legal position right now? Is he solely in the hands of the government? And if so, which government?
Mr. Assange is in custody in British government control. He has been arrested for basically skipping bail, would be how an American would refer to it. He was taken into custody in the UK on the rape charges, which we can talk about in a second, out of Sweden. And then he was let go in order to be able to reappear to meet those charges. And that's when he sought refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy. So he was arrested ostensibly on violation of that charge. And as I read the legal experts in the British newspapers, I'm an American lawyer. The UK system is a cousin system to ours, but it's certainly not identical. The analysis that I've seen that seems most common, Mark, is that it could be up to a 1.5-year sentence for him on that charge alone. So that's just the UK current custody charges.
Okay, and so what charges is he likely to face in the future, and how serious are these charges? Specifically, I guess, from America.
Right. Well, so we have the American charges and then potentially Swedish charges. So in America, he has been indicted for conspiring with Chelsea Manning to violate federal law. The conspiracy involves him encouraging Manning to use credentials that she didn't have access to, or then it was he, I guess, Bradley Manning, didn't have legitimate access to computers, which he was taking the files that he was providing to WikiLeaks for. So these are files that displayed and demonstrated U.S. military actions in Iraq. Manning thought that they were violative of international law and perhaps war crimes, and wanted to get the word out and gave that information to WikiLeaks and Assange. Assange said to Manning, basically encouraged Manning to continue to provide more and more information. Honestly, Mark, I think that the indictment itself, as I've read, is just really an indictment for Assange for conducting journalism. Assange says to Manning, basically, we like this material and go ahead and go get more of it. And that's the really the nuts and bolts of the indictment. Just that act alone, according to the Trump administration and the United States government position now, means that Assange has committed a federal crime, even though Assange, unlike Manning, never took an oath to defend the United States or protect it. Let's recall that Manning was a U.S. soldier and Assange was a foreign national who was not even in the United States at the time of these goings on. So I think it's quite a bit of a reach, but nonetheless, that is the very serious charge that Assange may have to come to the United States to defend himself against.
Okay, I mean, with Chelsea Manning, she was pardoned from a 35-year sentence by Barack Obama. From your perspective, how does this play out in light of that? Will he receive the same munificent clemency, or will something different happen?
Well, it's important, I think, to be clear that Manning was not pardoned. Barack Obama commuted Manning's sentence. Now, the commutation is different than a pardon, because all the commutation says, Mark, is because of a humanitarian or other, basically, we're not going to really turn the screws to punish you that much. So your conviction stands and everything that goes along with it. And a federal felony conviction, along with a dishonorable discharge in the United States of America, is no small matter in terms of the impact that it may have on your life going forward. But the sentence itself needn't be served. And so Manning was allowed to be free. So how will that impact Assange? Well, the impetus for Barack Obama to kind of get credibility from the left to release this. And the other thing you have to remember, too, is the United States government tortured Bradley and then Chelsea Manning. I think there's no other fair way to say it than that. with the denial of clothing and subject to constant lights on conditions, really classic prisoner torture conditions. Fortunately, they then stopped that. But I think that was part of the impetus to commute Manning's sentence. Also, because of the gender identity issues that Manning was dealing with, that created a great deal of sympathy for her. And so I don't think the pressure wave will be the same for Julian Assange, and certainly not with the Trump administration as it was with the Obama administration.
Okay, so aren't there essentially some protections for whistleblowers? And that is what Mr. Assange is, isn't it? It's a whistleblower.
Well, whistleblower protection typically involves protection from people inside an agency, not outside an agency. There are some federal protections for whistleblowers that are outside an agency, but they don't typically involve encouraging people to use unauthorized computer access to then publish those files. I think that the laws that will grant Mr. Assange protection chiefly will be the First Amendment to the Constitution, rather than any kind of federal whistleblower protection.
Okay. I mean, the Assange issue, it's a very divisive one. We have half of the media saying that this is, as you pointed out, it's an assault on journalistic practices. And the other half saying that he personally endangered lives. So from a legal angle, is this a fine line balance? What's happening?
I don't see it that way, Mark. I think both are true. And there's no reason why both cannot be true. We can commit an act of journalism that also endangers lives. It's part of the responsibility of a professional journalist to be mindful of that fact. And just because a journalist does endanger lives with their act of journalism, and I want to be clear, I think that Assange's publications of these documents, videos and papers is journalism, to be sure, that it is his responsibility, but it doesn't make it somehow prosecutable or not journalism because his acts have threatened people's lives. That's part of journalism sometimes, and inclusive in the protections granted in the First Amendment right to practice journalism.
So that brings us back to the beginning here. What's happening with the Sweden charges?
So these were the first charges. Mark, I encourage anybody who wants to go ahead and read the actual allegations that these two women have brought against Julian Assange. Mark, I've never seen a clear case of what happens when hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, I think is the appropriate way to think about this. Julian Assange met and bedded two separate women in a weekend. They both found out about the others, and they were both not happy about the situation. After the fact, which is to say after their sexual dalliance, and then after he was done visiting with them after. So it's not just like there was a sexual event and then a complaint of improper sex or rape or molestation. But no, they had an intimate affair, and then afterwards they had meals together and texted together and that kind of thing. But then subsequent to that, the two women found out about each other and decided ex post facto that the initial encounter all of a sudden wasn't consensual. And that is what they allege. This isn't like I'm divining this. That's what they actually allege. So in Sweden, it's hard to imagine how this kind of accusation is allowed to proceed forward. In the United States, it's not rape unless the consent is withdrawn prior to the act.
All right, thanks for that, Scott. Thank you for all your advice and input on this, telling us what's really happening from a legal standpoint. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mark.
Again, you're watching Liberty Nation's LNTV. You can hit subscribe down below. You can go to our site and check out our excellent podcasts, our in-depth articles and analysis. You can find more video features. It's all on libertynation.com. Thanks for watching. Take care.